Getting back to basics in shooting. That's what we're going to talk about today. Getting back to basics. Welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting, tactics, use of force, ballistics, all manner of things, the right way with Almighty God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world, first-hand experience. Hey, if you're a regular listener, you've listened to more than one episode, this is not your first rodeo here. Like, subscribe, leave a review of the podcast, hit some stars, whatever your app allows. I would appreciate that. You want to do that while you're listening to the bio or fast forwarding through the bio. It's coming. It's going to be about 2 minutes, which on most apps that I'm aware of is about 4 hits on the fast forward button if you've heard it before. But I don't think you should listen to me because I'm some dude on the internet or because I have a podcast. Because I'm getting paid by some gun company or outdoors company to push a product on you. That's not why I want you to listen. So, the bio and then the main topic. I'll roll into a quick abbreviated bio and then into the main topic. First and foremost, I am a Christian. I don't apologize for that. God is number one in my life. I grew up hunting and fishing in the backwoods of the southeastern United States at a very early age. Some of my earliest memories are with firearms. I joined the Marine Corps at 17, did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. By God's grace, He got me through that safely. After that, I served as an instructor, an urban warfare instructor and a desert warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps. I also served with the LAPD, both full-time as a sworn police officer and in some more specialized assignments, as well as serving in the U.S. Army, full-time and part-time National Guard. I've been a FBI firearms instructor, still am an FBI firearms instructor, have been for a lot of years, also NRA certified and some other 3-letter government agency certified. I've been a private contractor for a 3-letter government agency I won't specify. I've been the commander of a tactical team in a large metropolitan area. By God's grace, He got me through all that in one piece, not because I'm better, but because He chose to have grace and mercy on me. I've been a professional hunter and guide. Professionally hunted things like buffalo and elk. Not many people today can say they've done that, but I'm blessed to be able to say that I have. I've hunted everything from white-tailed deer on the East Coast to mule deer on the West Coast to gray squirrel on the East Coast to prairie dog on the West Coast and elk and bear and wolf and slain all manner of beast. A state rifle and pistol champion a few times over in a few different disciplines. Now those experiences, it's not because I'm bigger or badder, certainly not bigger. In fact, I met one of the patrons in real life and he said something to the effect of, I thought you'd be bigger. Reminded me of that William Wallace movie where he's like, oh yeah, if William Wallace were here, he'd shoot lightning bolts out of his rear end. Well, I'm not William Wallace, but I am the person that did all those things in the bio. But not because I'm bigger or badder. I don't think that I survived when many other young, good men did not. I give all the glory and all the credit to God, all the talents and experiences that He's given me and the things that He's let me live through. I hope to use them to glorify God and to help you today. So if I boast in anything, it's not in my strength, it's in that God had mercy on me and saved me because He had a purpose for me. And hopefully I can use those talents, skills, and abilities to serve you today. Back to basics. That's what we're talking about today. I've been making that more of a focus here recently, and I thought I would share that with you. But back to basics. You are never too good for the basics. The day you think you're too good for the basics or you're beyond them, you're probably not very good. You probably think you're good, but you're probably not. It's all about the basics. Even the best shooters in the world, it's their basics. And when you start getting problems in your shooting, it's almost always because there is some crack in the foundation of your fundamentals. Stance, grip, sight alignment, sight picture, trigger control, follow through, those kind of things. Natural point of aim. You're having an issue with the basics. So, just a little cautionary thing here. If you ever see a thing that says, this one tip, this one thing is going to make you, I don't know, a Navy SEAL shooter or a spaceship special forces commando with a handgun or with a rifle. This one thing is going to make you a sniper, right? Just probably discount that entire thing. Unless that thing is prayer and practice, because that's what's going to make you a great shooter, right? There's no like one trick to make you a thing or one trick to make you a that thing. That's not how that works. Shooting, especially handgun shooting, requires a lot of hard work, dedication, and maintenance. It's a very perishable skill. It's a very unnatural thing to have an explosion go off in front of your face and hold the gun completely steady and not react to it, right? I can tell you what it takes to be a great handgun shooter in about 10 seconds, but it takes a lifetime of dedication and practice and continued renewal of that to stay on it. You want to know how to be a great handgun shooter? Here, put the sight on the target, align the sights if you're using iron sights, keep them completely still until after the projectile has left the gun. Boom. You do that every time, you will be a great handgun shooter. Period. It's not hard to explain. Again, it's basic, but it's very hard to master. It's a lifetime of dedication and maintenance and skill. There's not this one trick with your thumb. There's not this one grip thing is going to make you awesome with a handgun, right? That's garbage. Stop. But like, if you see that, you should probably be real skeptical of that. Now, there are certain techniques that are better than others. There are certain stances and grips that are better than others, but they're minutia, right? If you, like I was taught, sadly, the Weaver stance, which is way outdated, but I can shoot good in a Weaver stance. I won't shoot as fast transitioning from targets at different angles than I will in a more modern gunfighting stance, but I can shoot good in a Weaver stance. Does it make a difference? Yeah, it makes a difference, but you're talking about a small percentile, even between a drastic change in stances. Can I run a plate rack faster in what I would consider my more modern, up-to-date, better technique and stance? Can I run a plate rack faster that way? Yeah, but I can still run a plate rack fast in a Weaver. The change is not as drastic as you might believe. And the reason I can shoot fast in a Weaver is because I've shot a lot of rounds in a Weaver. Sadly, even some of the modern schools that I've attended fairly recently in history still teach the Weaver. And here's a little tip for you if you ever take a training class, something like that. Even if you might disagree, if you're there paying for training or getting training, take the training that they give you. You can leave what you want to leave at the door, but try your best effort to do what they are telling you to do with the training that you're getting, even if they're teaching you the Weaver, which is about 20 to 40 years outdated. There may be a time when you're an instructor and you have a student that for whatever physiological reason, they can't get in an isosceles type stance, which I don't even really like the term isosceles because that's not really the stance that I shoot in either. But you get the idea. You may have somebody with a physiological challenge where they can't get in that and they have to shoot in a Weaver. So you probably, even if you know it's an outdated technique, should get good at shooting the Weaver because you may have to teach somebody to shoot in the Weaver and shoot good in the Weaver. So you should probably know how to do that too. Even though I don't usually shoot in the Weaver, right? I've probably shot more in the Weaver than most people shoot. So there's that. And I still try and practice it from time to time just to keep it in my back pocket, let's say, so I can whip it out if I have to. If I go to some school or I'm having some instruction by somebody and they're like, you need to shoot in the Weaver. And I'm like, fine, I'll shoot in the Weaver. It's not like somebody's asking me to beat a Muslim or something, right? It's not sacrilegious, right? If you want me to shoot in the Weaver, I'll shoot in the Weaver. I really am not a big fan at all for any kind of shooting unless you like have sun in your face or something, shooting with one eye closed. But if somebody asks me to do that and I'm shooting rifle and they think it's going to make me better, I'll shut one eye. I'll make them happy, right? And though I don't normally shoot that way, I can shoot okay with one eye closed, and it's going to slow me down as far as target transitions and things like that. It's going to get rid of my peripheral vision, which I don't want from trying to not get shot. But you get the idea. I can do it because the basics are there. The fundamentals are there. Go back to the basics. Go back to the fundamentals. You're never too good for the fundamentals. And part of that is I've been going back to more basic gear, and some of that has been brought on by the job that, by God's grace, I'll be starting very soon. I recently actually just moved yesterday, just woke up this morning in a new place. As you might know, the wife and we live as neo-nomads, but the podcast has not exactly been making it rain. I said I would give it a year, and I've given it 2. And I've dug into savings, I've cashed out Bitcoin, I've cashed out retirement accounts, trying to make this podcast successful. And it is successful as far as the numbers, but a lot of that I will take responsibility for. I don't want to take sponsors or anything like that, because I don't want to take a bribe. You shall take no bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the righteous. And I would rather fail financially with integrity than tell you, you got to buy this new cool Gucci camouflage pattern if you want to kill elk, or you want to be a great handgun shooter, buy this gas pedal widget for the side of your gun, or you want to be cool like me, you should use this handgun brand or this rifle brand. I'm not that dude, and I'm not going to do that to you. You get that from a ton of other places. You think what you're seeing on a lot of YouTube channels and stuff like that is organic? There's giant, monstrous groups that are in charge of a lot of times what those people put out and when they put it out and how much they're getting paid. If you want that, fine. There's plenty of that content out there, but that's not what I want to do here. Anyway, with that, I've taken on a new professional gunfighting role as a contractor, so I had to move. I am in the high desert right now, very different from the beautiful North Idaho that I left, so it's bittersweet. I love North Idaho, but I'm out in the high desert right now, getting ready to do some training, getting ready for some gunfighting type work. Have gun, will travel. That's okay. You may get a little bit less frequent podcasts, but there's a time to spend and a time to save, and hopefully there'll be some money put in the bank. That is one good thing about contracting, private contracting, is that it pays pretty well. But part of that is I know the equipment that I will be using and issued, and it's pretty basic, right? I'm not going to be using a lot of the latest, greatest equipment. I'll be using some pretty, in my opinion, old, antiquated equipment. But that's fine, right? I can make do with it. Will it make a difference? Yes. Can I run some handguns faster than others? Yeah. Does gear make a difference? It makes some difference. Yeah. Like going back to the plate rack. Can I run a plate rack fast with a Glock? I can, even though Glock is one of my least favorite handguns. Can I run that plate rack way faster with an STI Staccato 2011? Yeah, for sure. Way faster. But I can still run a fast plate rack with a Glock. So if you tell me I have to use a Glock, I'm not going to be like, well, I'm taking my ball and going home. Fine, I'll run a Glock. Again, because back to basics. If you have good basics, if you have good fundamentals, you can shoot pretty much any handgun well. You should be able to go to a range and pick up anybody's handgun and shoot it decent. Maybe not as good as you shoot yours because you have more practice with yours, but the fundamentals should transfer. Going back to basics. I generally like running a handgun with an optic. I've made that transition for a while now, and there's a lot of advantage to it. But I can still run a handgun with iron sights. I still practice with iron sights. I like, especially when I'm out hunting in rugged, remote, spot and stalk type hunting in large western regions, I generally like to run an optic. It is a force multiplier. I like an LPVO on my hunting rifle. I know a lot of people like these big high-end, high magnification scopes. I generally don't. I run an LPVO, but I still run a magnified optic. It is still a force multiplier, but I like backup iron sights on my hunting guns because if I break that optic, which I've been known to break stuff, actually this last hunting season, I fell a couple of times, fell a lot of times. And one of the encounters, whether I fell or I dropped the gun or I slid off a log or something, I loosened one of the mounts on my optic. But the gun had backup iron sights. And I can shoot with backup iron sights. Do I like it as much as an LPVO? No, but I can do it, right? If I'm not going to, again, take my ball and go home, which a lot of people would do if they broke their scope on a hunt. I'm just like, oh, well, I've got quick detached scope mounts. Now I'm hunting with irons. Again, because the fundamentals. Some people today, I think, especially with a rifle, sadly, have never even shot with irons. They go straight to an optic before they may have a rifle without backup iron sights. They may have like an AR without backup iron sights. They just have an optic. I would consider running iron sights a fundamental. And I would say part of going back to basics is basic iron sights, whether it's regular iron sights on a handgun and different kinds of iron sights on a rifle. You could talk about what I would consider a better sighting system, an aperture rear sighting system and a rear aperture sight like you would get on an M16 or an M4, or you talk about like an AK style open notch sight in the rear. Even that's not as good, but it's fine, right? You can get good hits at distance with even those pretty rudimentary, crude iron sights if you know what you're doing. Again, probably a better analogy instead of a plate rack for this is, can I shoot as small a group with irons as I can with an optic at a longer distance? At a close distance, it might be the same, but at a longer distance, probably not, because on most iron sights, the front of that sight is going to cover up a lot of that target. So I don't have as fine an aiming point, but I can shoot a pretty small group with iron sights. Why? Because the basics, because you practice the basics, you practice the fundamentals. It's what I'm kind of hopefully encouraging us to do from time to time. There is a time and a season for the latest and greatest gear. Again, if I'm getting in a gunfight and I have a choice, I don't want a Glock. I mean, I don't want a handgun, but if I have to have a handgun, if that's the only gun I can have on me, I don't want a standard factory Glock. I know that there's other guns that I can shoot better, more accurately, faster. I don't want to handicap myself in a gunfight if I don't have to. But it's still good every once in a while to brush off the factory Glock and run that gritty, nasty, mushy trigger and just regular iron sights to get back to the fundamentals and the basics. And if you can run that good, you can run a what I would call quote-unquote better gun faster, more accurately. All right, do I have a lot of nice rifles? Am I blessed to have a really nice Scar 17 with a really nice LPVO? Yeah, and I'm blessed to have that gun. But it's still good to go out and practice with a Ruger 1022 with iron sights, with a sling. Basics, right? Basics. Not just for the ammo saving cost, just for basics. But if I can put rounds on a coffee can at 200 yards with a 1022 with iron sights, right, hitting that coffee can at 200 yards with the Scar 17 is a cakewalk, right? Because I've got the fundamentals down, the basics, and you're always trying to improve and always trying to get better, and it's a perishable skill. It doesn't matter how good you were 10 years ago or 20 years ago. It doesn't matter that I was a state pistol champion several years ago. If I get into a gunfight today, it matters how good I am today. It's a perishable skill. So staying good on those fundamentals. And also, you never know what gun you're going to have to fight with. You hope it's yours. You hope it's the one that you trained with a lot, but maybe not. Maybe your gun gets taken out pretty early in the fight and you got to pick up another gun. You should be good with the fundamentals, with the basics. Only ever shot a gun with a red dot or with a scope, and then all of a sudden you got to pick up a gun with iron sights and use it. You had better be able to use it. And I don't just mean make it make noise, because if you're just randomly pulling a trigger on a gun, you're basically just making it make noise. And some people like that. This is not that podcast. Some people just like going to the range and turning money into noise. If you want to do that for fun, that's fine, but realize that's fun. That's not training to be a gunfighter. You should be able to pick up most common pattern weapons, AKs, ARs, Glocks, a revolver, and shoot them and run them fairly decently. Again, maybe not as good as your handgun that's zeroed for you at a certain distance and you know how it shoots and you know the recoil control, but fairly decently. So this episode is encouraging you to get back to basics. You want a basic gun. Glocks make up a giant chunk of the market. They have a different grip angle. Yeah. Do they have a horrible trigger? Yeah. Do they have bad sights? In general, they do. Yeah. But again, it's back to basics. You should be able to pick up any Glock unless it's broken or its sights have been knocked off or some crazy thing, and be able to get hits on a man-sized target at 25 yards. Right? Even if the Glock is perhaps one of the worst guns on the market, except for like a high point, you should still be able to do that because it's less about the gun itself and more about your skill. Might you have a really nice target bolt action 22 with a really nice scope on it and a really nice aftermarket trigger? Yeah, that's great and that's fantastic. But you ought to still be able to go out and take an iron-sighted, again, assuming the sights aren't off or something, you should be able to take out a standard Ruger 1022 with a pretty bad trigger and iron sights and shoot a rabbit at 50 yards because you have firm fundamentals. So even if you have more maybe advanced or better guns, maybe it's a good idea to brush off the basics. Again, a Glock, standard trigger, not some kind of Guccified Glock, just standard trigger Glock, standard sights, or standard Smith & Wesson M&P, especially the first gens. They had atrocious triggers. I love the M&P, but the first gen M&Ps had really bad triggers. Like, they made a Glock trigger look good. So Smith & Wesson M&P with iron sights. You're talking rifles. If you have 1022 or Marlin Model 60 with iron sights, if not, do you have, an older AR-15 that's more analogous to an M16A1 or A2 or M4 with just iron sights? If you have a rifle with backup iron sights, maybe from time to time you just want to shoot the iron sights. You want to get back to basics in hunting. Maybe you have better guns. Maybe you just want to go hunting with the 1022 with iron sights. Maybe you just want to go hunting with a single shot shotgun. Just to limit yourself. If you're going out for a day of rabbit hunting or something like that, maybe you won't get as many rabbits as you will with a nice semi-auto 20 gauge. But you know what? If you just want to go out and reconnect with the basics, you might get something out of just going out and hunting rabbits with a single shot. Now, I'm not saying you have to do that all the time unless it's what you really like, but from time to time, again, if you're not going for meat, if you're not going for a survival thing and you just want to get back to basics, maybe a single shot 410, going through the woods can be a lot of fun. Maybe quail are in season and you jump a covey of quail and you only get one instead of 2 or 3, but again, back to basics. You might get something from it. I went elk hunting this past year with a recurve bow. And is that as good as a compound bow for hunting elk? No, it's not. Can I get better hits at longer distances with a compound bow? Yeah, I can. But I took the recurve. I didn't get an elk. I saw 6 big bull elk. I was not able to get in. I got in pretty close, but I did not get 20 yards away, which is what I was comfortable with a recurve bow on an elk. So I didn't even get an elk, but I've gotten elk before. I had a lot of fun chasing elk with a recurve bow. It's a lot of fun. It's a great time running around the North Idaho wilderness, chasing elk with basically a curved stick, right? It's a lot of fun. Back to basics. It's not all about gear, and I think so much marketing and stuff is getting pushed on people in the shooting and the tactical world. And I'm not against gear. You know that if you've listened for any length of time. I'm not against leveraging new technology if it's actually good. But it's not all about the gear, and your foundation shouldn't be about gear. If you consider gear as a force multiplier, if your force is 0 because you have no fundamentals, because your ability is horrible, if you multiply anything by 0, it's still 0. It's exponential, right? If you multiply something by 2 versus multiplying a factor by 4. All right, if you're going to put an optic on a handgun, it should be because you're already pretty good with a handgun. It shouldn't be because you're horrible with a handgun and you think somehow putting a red dot on it is going to make you John Wick. That's not how that works. If you have a wicked flinch with a handgun with iron sights, guess what? You're going to have a wicked flinch on a handgun when you put the red dot on it. You shooting low left, you're not going to fix that with a dot. You're going to fix it with grace, with prayer, with dedication, repetition. That's how you're going to fix it, not with a dot. Don't look for a hardware solution to a software problem. So, I don't want to turn this into a beating a dead horse episode. I think you get the idea. I don't want to just ramble on. You get the idea. Back to basics is good sometimes, even if you have better stuff, even if you have better kit. Case in point, if you don't know, the Marine Corps is kind of known for having the jankiest, crappiest gear out of a lot of the armed forces. and it's known for being one of the best fighting forces. And it's not because their gear is junk, it's because the stuff makes nowhere near as much difference as the other things that go into being a warrior. The Marines are known for being a formidable fighting force. Anyway, with that, we'll roll into the tactical tip of the day. And that's going to be a small hand file. Maybe you want a couple of like small jeweler's files, but a small hand file. If you have a range bag, you may have the common range bag fodder in there, eye protection, ear protection, ammo, maybe even a little multi-tool. That's all great. But a good hand file can come in handy for a lot of things. Some minor gunsmithing, something out of spec. You can use it to sharpen an axe, a knife, if you just need. It's not the best. If you're talking about cutting a lot of range stuff to make a range, and you just need to put a quick edge on something, a file is great for that. You drop something, smash something, you get a nasty burr on something, you need to round it off. Again, just a handy file. They're cheap, they're inexpensive. There's something that's fairly hard to recreate, so maybe something to consider having in your range bag, having in your truck. Anyway, with that, that's your tactical tip of the day, your tactical verse of the day. This is from Psalm 20. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. No weapon, I don't care how good it is, I don't care if it's a megaton nuclear warhead, it pales in comparison to the power of our God. Be confident in your God. If God is for us, who can be against us? The Bible says. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.